you so much for joining me today. Today we're talking about the spiritual realities of marijuana. And I already know that a lot of you guys are gonna get triggered by this video, but that's okay, because my channel is not meant to make you happy. It's meant to give you the truth, no matter what. But the whole goal of this video is to sort of plant that seed to what's really going on. So I'm making this video today because this is a massive problem in today's society. You can't turn a corner in any major city without running into a dispensary. There's people out here that are bragging to each other about how much they smoke. Heck, some of you watching this video right now are probably high. Because the thing is, the vast majority of people out there believe that marijuana is just a plant, that it's their medicine, that it enhances activities, and this is all pure deception, guys. Because marijuana is one of the devil's top weapons to infiltrate your mind and in turn infiltrate your soul. Because what weed really is a spiritual portal that leaves you at the mercy of whatever wants to come into your life. I'm gonna ask y'all a couple questions real quick. Have you ever experienced paranoia while getting high? What about, have you ever had a bad trip and had toxic thoughts about yourself, about your life, about your family, friends, only to completely subside once you sober up? What do you think that is? So today, we're gonna dive deep into these questions and a whole lot more. Let's get started. History of marijuana. So for thousands of years, marijuana was used as a medium to contact spirits and astral entities by all the ancient societies. So we're talking the Hindus. The Hindus used to smoke hashish to contact their deities and receive revelations. And then Native Americans, they would also mix marijuana with their tobacco to aid in their meditations and contact their spirit guides. And even the Egyptians have hieroglyphs, guys, showcasing people smoking weed from a pipe. Up until the last 100 years or so, marijuana was just used for ritual and medicinal purposes. But once Satan realized that he could leverage this plant to spread his kingdom of darkness and strengthen it, that's when things changed for the worse. Marijuana in the modern age. All right, y'all, so I'm gonna take y'all on my time machine. We're gonna go back to the 1950s. During the 1950s, belief in God was an all-time high. 98% of people in the US believed in God and would attend church regularly. Children would pray in mass every morning at school. Music and movies were about love, friendship, and God. Times were good. Well, good for us, bad for Satan. So in 1953, he called up his buddies at the CIA and told them he wanted a way to get the masses on his side and make his side seem cool and hip. So the CIA started conducting mind control experiments under the code name Project MK Ultra. They would give people mind-altering substances like marijuana, LSD, magic mushrooms, to see how they affected the human mind and if they could control us easier with them. And what they found made the devil salivate. They found that these substances slow down your brain waves from regular beta waves, which is very good at filtering out information and making conscious decisions, to alpha state, where you are susceptible to being hypnotized and influenced by others. So during these experiments, the CIA noticed that when people are given enough drugs for a long period of time and given the same messages over and over again, it becomes ingrained in them to the point where it literally warps their view of reality to the point where their actions are heavily influenced by external forces, essentially brainwashing them to the point where they are no longer in control. So once the devil heard of these results, he called his music executive buddies and immediately ordered them to sign artists that talked about drugs and sex and mixed it with messages of peace and love to make it more covert. At the same time, North American streets became flooded with marijuana and psychedelics. Essentially, the youth was MK Ultra to the will of Satan, also known as the hippie movement. Then slowly through the decades, Satan, absolutely floored by the results of the 60s, kept making music darker and darker, more violent, more sexual. Because what do people do when they smoke weed? They listen to music, they watch movies, they watch TV. And who runs all these industries? Satan, the devil. See, because when you smoke weed and take in worldly entertainment, your subconscious is, in a literal sense, being programmed by the devil himself. And this is why society is the way it is now. What weed really does is it makes it easier to brainwash you. When your brain is in this alpha state, information goes straight into your subconscious, i.e., your soul. And then eventually, over time, becomes your reality. And you won't ever realize this because it is very subtle. But the end result is always the same. So let's go back to the question, what is weed? What weed really is a medium to mold your reality to the will of the devil instead of the will of God. A medium for the devil to snatch away your soul forever. Weed and magic. So weed has a very close connection with magic. It's considered sorcery under God's eyes. The reason being that ancient pagan societies used to utilize marijuana to use in rituals and to contact spirits that they thought were their gods. The ancient Canaanites would use cannabis to get in contact with their deity, Asherah, also known as Astaroth. And in modern times even, Hindu priests still use hashish to get in contact with their deities, with their spirits. Aleister Crowley, the most famous dark magician in the last 100 years, even wrote a book called The Psychology of Hashish, proclaiming that marijuana is the greatest medium to contact demons. He wrote a book, guys. See, because when modern people smoke weed, they don't realize the spiritual implications that come with this action. When you smoke weed, a spiritual door is opened for these demons to slip through. And since you're in an altered state of mind, you're vulnerable. You're at the mercy of these entities. You know, how many times have you smoked weed and gotten really high and got paranoid? You had toxic thoughts about yourself, about your life, about your friends, family, only for these thoughts to completely subside once you're sober. What do you think's causing this paranoia? You guys are smart. I don't need to tell you. And the thing we gotta realize, guys, is that 99% of people, when they get paranoid, they sober up, they get better. But what about that 1% that never come back? That 1% where that door stayed open for the rest of their lives. Schizophrenia. We're gonna touch on that a little bit momentarily, but this is a reality, guys. This is a reality that affects a lot of people. Now, how exactly does marijuana affect your mental health? Well, marijuana has been directly linked with psychosis. Dr. Ryan Sultan, a New York City-based, world-renowned psychiatrist, he stated, and I quote, "Of all the people I've diagnosed with psychotic disorder, I can't think of a single one who wasn't also positive for cannabis." So Dr. Ryan is on record stating that not some of his psychosis patients use marijuana, but all of them. Now, let's go a little bit deeper here. What exactly is psychosis? Psychosis is essentially when a person loses complete touch with reality. People, when they have an episode, guys, they do the craziest things. People have had episodes where they kill people, where they commit suicide, they mutilate themselves, like they take out their own eyeball, stuff like that. So, and then once they snap out of this episode, they completely forget what happened. It's really terrifying. And one of the major symptoms of a jinn possession is when someone can't recollect anything, when they completely black out. See the connection here, guys? So on top of psychosis, marijuana has also been linked to depression, anxiety, bipolar disorder, and schizophrenia, especially in young men between 18 and 24 years old. So what about physical health? How exactly does weed affect your physical health? According to the Journal of Urology, a study was done in the 1970s by Dr. Robert C. Kolodny, comparing non-smokers versus marijuana users. And these men were 18 to 28 years old, so they were in the prime of their life. And what Dr. Robert found was that the non-smokers had testosterone levels of 724, which is, you know, average, a little bit above average. It's pretty good. But the chronic users had an average testosterone level of 416, which is considered really low. You actually start seeing symptoms of low T levels at 600. And what exactly are these symptoms, you might be asking? So these symptoms include, but are not limited to, reduced sex drive, ED, erectile dysfunction, you can't get it up when you have low T levels, fatigue, you're always tired, weight gain, reduced muscle mass, depression, we talked about this earlier, mood swings, and low confidence. All directly correlated with low T levels, which is caused by marijuana, which you would never know unless you actually looked into this stuff. Then, okay, so on top of that, guys, let's say you're a guy and you found yourself a nice girl, wiped her up or whatever, and you want to have kids, but you smoke a lot of weed. But for some reason, you're trying, you can't have no kids. What's going on? Well, that's because men who use marijuana more than once a week have, on average, 30% less sperm per ejaculation. So this has a significant impact on your fertility, whether or not you can have kids. So right now, we're gonna go over a few deceptions surrounding marijuana. First one, God put this here for us to enjoy. Yeah, you're absolutely right, he did. He put it here to test you. To test your discipline, ultimately to test your character. Number two, makes me feel good. You know what else feels good? Unmarried sex. Fornicating with random strangers. That feels good too. Sinning always makes you feel good. Because if it didn't make you feel good, no one would ever do it. Next up, number three, makes me feel closer to God. Guys, this is pure deception from Satan. Because God made you fully capable of connecting with him at your sober state. And whatever you feel closer to, it's definitely not God. Because he fully states in all the scriptures that intoxicants, drugs, alcohol, are completely forbidden and completely haram. Number four, weed's my medicine. So what Satan did is he Trojan horsed the masses by masquerading marijuana as a medicine, when in reality, it's just another method for him to get past our defenses and infiltrate us to release his demons from within. Let's go back in time. The year was 2006. This young bloke, that was me in high school, and I was indulging in weed. In the mornings, I'd wake and bake with this stoner kid at my bus stop. He'd call me over to smoke with him. And at the time, I thought it's because he's being friendly. But now that I look back and I remember his eyes when he called me over, they were conniving, almost as if his demon had taken over, following orders from the devil to lead me astray as well. So I continued smoking every now and then with kids from school, but I didn't enjoy it as much. I'd get anxiety, sometimes I'd get really paranoid. And eventually when I got into my early 20s, I stopped completely. I felt vulnerable whenever I was high. It's almost as if God was convicting my heart to stop before it got really bad. Now, those same kids that used to smoke me up in high school, many of them are in prison. Some of them, they're drug addicts living on the streets. Some of them are no longer with us. They either overdosed on other drugs or they unalived themselves. They took their own lives. These were the stoner kids in my high school. They were seen as rebels. They were seen as cool. I look back on their lives and how they ended up, and it all began with weed. And so I'm making this video in their memory. These are real people with real dreams, and I pray their souls find peace. You know, God, He gives you many warnings. Warning after warning. You watching this video right now, do you think that's a coincidence? Take heed, guys. Take heed to His warnings. He wants the best for you. And whenever you leave a vice for God, He always replaces it with something 100 times better. Always know that. Thank you for watching. Take care. Peace.